Houston's original neighborhood downtown is for everyone, and right now is the perfect time to check out their Market Square Park Farmers Market. Every Saturday until November 16th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., the Farmers Market is putting a spotlight on local growers and makers who are providing access to seasonally fresh and affordable fruits and vegetables, plus meat proteins and prepared foods, as well as other household goods. There's also live music from local artists and other entertainment, and it's free. You can learn more at downtownhouston.org. Downtown Houston, get energized and revived. Find your fall vibes in Pearland with a full calendar of autumn events. Hike through history from Valentin's Brewing Company to the Old Settler Cemetery on October 25th. And on October 26th, you can kickstart your holiday shopping at the Pearland Boutique Shop and Hop. And enjoy curated menus for a cause the entire month of November for Pearland Restaurant Weeks. Discover Pearland this season, where charm and hospitality meet unforgettable experiences. Get all the details on these events and more at visitpearland.com/to-do. Today on CityCast Houston, everybody's talking about Vice President Kamala Harris's rally here in Houston, and Beyoncé is going to be there. But besides all of those celebrity endorsements, why is VP Harris here in Houston? And I don't know if you guys have heard about what's happening in Fort Bend right now, but voters approved this massive bond last year, and now the school board is saying, well, you're actually not going to get some of those things that were promised in the bond. So how is that going to impact HISD and their $4.4 billion bond, which is on the ballot right now? Plus, the Harris County District Attorney's race is going to be a lot closer than you think. Houston Landing's politics reporter Paul Cobler joins me to recap a busy week in H-Town. It's Friday, October 25th. I'm Raheel Ramzanali, and here's what Houston's talking about. Hey, Paul, happy Friday. How are you?
Happy Friday, Raheel. I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing all right. There is a buzz in the city, right? It's a big day today. We've got the historic rally. We're going to talk about that in a second. But before we jump into that, any big takeaways from early voting? We're about a week in now.
Yeah, I mean, I went and cast my early ballot yesterday at the Westgrave Multi-Service Center, and there was a long line outside and around the building, just like there has been every single day. So my big takeaway at this point is just people are engaged, people are paying attention, and people are voting.
Yeah, they definitely are. And over 380,000 ballots have already been cast as of midweek here in Harris County in Fort Bend, where I live. And this is going to be a big topic of conversation because a lot of people are casting their ballots. But in Fort Bend, more than double the early voting numbers from 2020 so far. So, people are excited about this election.
Wow, and that's impressive to hear. I mean, in Harris County over here, we were pretty much on par with 2020, but 2020 was a record-breaking year for early voting. So, I mean, I would say this is still looking to be a very high turnout election.
For me, I was talking to my wife about this. What is the best day to cast an early vote, right? Like this week, there's still so much that could change into next week. So I was thinking it's either next Wednesday or Thursday is the best day because that's as close as you can get without long lines of Friday, right? Because that is the last day to vote next week. So yeah, that was just like a silly conversation we had. Like, what is the optimal day?
That's exactly right. I mean, early voting, it's the first couple days always see the highest numbers, and it tends to kind of level off until the last couple days of early voting, it picks up again. So if you're looking for the day with the shortest lines, it will probably be somewhere between Monday and Wednesday of next week.
Yep. And let's talk about today because it's going to be a big day here in the city of Houston as presidential nominee and VP Kamala Harris is going to be here today with Representative Collin Allred. Now, this is a historic rally because it's the first time in over 30 years that a Democratic presidential nominee has campaigned in Texas this close to the election. Now, the rally today is going to focus on abortion rights. But Paul, let's talk about the symbolism for this rally. What was your initial thought when you saw this announced?
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was pretty extraordinary. This is my third presidential election cycle covering politics in Texas. So I'm not any grizzled, gray-haired veteran by any means, but we certainly have never seen a presidential candidate showing up, campaigning here this close to an election, and to have it happening here in Houston is exciting. But yeah, it raises a lot of questions. Why? I mean, the thing that I hear the most from political analysts is in these last couple of weeks of the campaign, the most precious resource that they have is time. It's not money, it's time. And if you're using your candidate to go to any particular place, it's because they obviously see something. Based on the polling, I mean, I really don't think Kamala Harris has a chance of winning Texas, although it has been getting closer and closer. And she's polling at about 5% under Trump here. But Collin Allred on the Senate ticket, he has been polling ahead of Kamala Harris when compared to Ted Cruz in his Senate race. And I think just looking at the Senate map around the country, Democrats don't look likely to hold Montana. So they're looking for opportunities to pick up seats in other places to maintain control of the very, very narrow margins in the U.S. Senate. It's 50-50 right now. So if they lose Montana with Jon Tester, but maybe they find a way to win Texas through Collin Allred, I mean, that would be a big, big win for Democrats. And I think that is what Kamala Harris is eyeing with this rally on Friday.
So is this more about the Senate race than the presidential race? Like, do they think that it's so close that maybe VP Harris being here could sway it?
I mean, I think so. It's kind of just, this is speculation. We're sort of reading the tea leaves here. But I think based on the polling that we have seen, the amount of money that Collin Allred has started spending, the Democratic Senate Campaign Committee just a couple of weeks ago announced a big ad buy in support of him. That is also something that DSCC does not do usually. These national Democratic campaign committees spending money on races in Texas is not something that happens very often. So, I always tell people, don't necessarily look at the polls to try to figure out what happens. Look at what the campaigns are doing. Ted Cruz is spending a lot of money. I'm sure anybody who watches college football like me has seen all of the campaign ads. Collin Allred is also spending a lot of money. And we've got candidates coming here. These resources, this time is being put into the state of Texas. And I think that shows that this race is closer than people think it is.
Now, you're going to be at the rally tonight, and you're going to be there with a star-studded roster. By the way, Willie Nelson is going to be there. DJ Trife is going to be there. Miss Tina Knowles herself, Beyonce's mom, is going to be there. Also, Paul, ABC News has reported that Beyonce will be on stage with VP Harris today here in Houston. So there is that for you. And maybe you get that much awaited concert that was promised at the DNC that we never got. I don't know if that's going to happen or not, Paul, but Beyonce will be there. And you, Paul, what are you expecting tonight?
I appreciate being listed in that cast of star-studded attendees at the rally tonight. It sounds like we may get that concert, but that's a heck of an endorsement. I mean, I think in this kind of age of celebrities endorsing, a lot of people have been waiting to hear from Beyonce to see if she was going to weigh in on this race, especially since Taylor Swift came out and endorsed Kamala Harris. So I think this is just another one that's going to kind of energize her base. And when this race is as close as it is, an energized base is what you need. I am obviously looking forward to a Willie Nelson concert. Yeah, you don't get very many of those, but I've found on the politics beat, if you cover enough Democratic rallies, you tend to see Willie Nelson pretty often. So I've been pretty blessed in that department. I'm just kind of interested to hear what the messaging is in this last couple weeks of campaigning. Kamala Harris has been really kind of pushing this message of democracy. Just earlier this week, she called Donald Trump a fascist during a town hall she was doing. And that's kind of been like the closing message from her. It's interesting to see them sort of now pivoting back to abortion. I think they're kind of throwing everything they can out there. We're really truly in the fever pitch moment of the campaign where there are multiple events a day, 7 days a week. I think it's just going to be, what is that closing message here in Texas and what resonates with Texas voters?
You talked about time being the most precious resource right now for these politicians as we get down to the final days. I wonder, just talking about abortion rights here in Texas, is that going to be something that energizes not only the state and voters who are on the fence, but around the nation as well, and especially in swing states?
Yeah, and I think that's another part of it is Texas. There's a lot of symbolism here, considering our very strict abortion ban with no exceptions. I'm sure you've seen the Collin Allred ads. He's been campaigning with people who have survived medical emergencies that may have been compounded by lack of access to abortion. Yeah. And I imagine we'll see those folks there with Kamala Harris and Collin Allred on the stage. I imagine that will be a big part of the messaging as far as, when we're thinking of this kind of democracy message, that has also come hand in hand with this sort of discussion of women losing rights because of the Roe v. Wade decision, this sort of ability to have this choice. Like, I think those two conversations can go together. So yeah, I think this is obviously important for the state of Texas, but I think there's a lot of symbolism nationally when we're thinking about things like what Kamala Harris has said she wanted to do is codify Roe v. Wade into federal law. And so that's been a big part of the Democrats' push. And A, Kamala Harris would need to be president for that to happen. B, Democrats would need to control the Senate for that to happen too. So I think all of these kind of play together as far as this final push in a race that is going to be so close.
Paul, I was thinking about this, like, do these rallies still matter? Like, are these enough to get people to go out and vote, right? Because we had a conversation earlier this week with your colleague, Dania Perez, about how Latino voters are now getting more people coming to their doors via canvassing. Like, isn't that more important? Would it be better to spend resources on that, having more people go door to door to energize a base or to get people to go out and vote? Like, do these rallies matter anymore, right? Like, all these speeches are online. So I know there's a buzz in the city, but to me, I feel like the resources would be better spent to have people going door to door.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you got to kind of think about when we're thinking of these resources, one of your best resources is the candidate, the person at the top of the ticket that is going to excite your base, that's going to excite your voters. You're not going to send them door to door knocking on somebody's door in Fort Bend County. No offense to Fort Bend. You want to put them up on stage where you can get a nice clip of them for social media, of them saying something punchy and snappy that'll energize voters. You want them in a big room where you have donors there who are getting energized and excited about their speech and sending money to the campaign so that they can hire more canvassers and door knockers for the final weeks of the campaign. It's really not like you're choosing one over the other. But these rallies, I think the value that they do bring is they just bring energy.
Hey Houston, looking for some design inspiration? Check out the 2024 AIA Houston Home Tour. On November 2nd and 3rd, you'll get a rare chance to step inside some of the city's most stunning custom homes, all crafted by some of Houston's top architects. Whether you're dreaming up your own perfect space or just love exploring amazing designs like I do, this tour is a must. Each home is a masterpiece showcasing the collaboration between homeowners, architects, and builders. And the best part? You can chat with the architects right there on site, so you can get tips, ask questions, and soak up all the creative vibes. Don't miss out on this unique experience. To learn more or grab your tickets, just head over to architecturehouston.org. Again, that's architecturehouston.org. So mark your calendars November 2nd and 3rd and come join us for the AIA Houston Home Tour. You won't want to miss it. The British International School of Houston is an international and diverse private school with top academic results in a state-of-the-art campus serving children from pre-K3 to 12th grade. The British International School of Houston offers an outstanding private education with state-of-the-art facilities on a sprawling 32-acre campus unlike anywhere else. They recruit teachers who are global talents to inspire students' confidence, resilience, and creativity with an international-minded environment. Students build pathways to the world's best universities through excellent results and internationally recognized qualifications. Are you interested in learning more about the British International School of Houston? Search BIS Houston today and get in touch with their admissions team. You can also join their upcoming open house on October 30th by registering online. That's the British International School of Houston. Hey, Paul, I want to talk to you about the DA's race because we haven't had a chance to really spend time on it, and this is a race that you've been covering a lot. Could you tell me what's happening with the DA's race and kind of give me a breakdown on both candidates as well?
Yeah, you know me, Raheel, I always love to talk about local elections. And if you care about public safety in the city of Houston and the county of Harris County, you should care about the district attorney's race. And I think this race is actually very, very interesting. I think it's going to be among the closest of our countywide races that we do have. We have on the Democratic side, Sean Tier, who is not an incumbent. If you guys remember, in the spring, in March, he unseated District Attorney Kim Ogg in the Democratic primary.
So how did he unseat Kim Ogg?
Kimog kind of lost favor with much of this sort of Democratic establishment here in Harris County, being County Judge Lena Hidalgo and a lot of the Commissioner's Courts folks, after District Attorney Kimog indicted 3 of her former staffers, alleging that they had steered a COVID vaccine contract improperly to a vendor that was tied to the Democratic Party. Now, that case is still playing out. It's just alleged that they had done any wrongdoing, and it's unclear where that's going to be in the coming months. But it is really basically pissed off a lot of Democrats in the city who, Lena Hidalgo is a very popular figure among the base. And so she and other more progressive Democrats backed Shantir in that primary, and he pretty easily ended up unseating Kimog. So now we have this non-incumbent Democratic nominee, and he is running against Dan Simons, who is the Republican nominee, obviously also a non-incumbent.
Can you tell me more about Dan Simons? What's his background?
He's kind of more of a lesser-known figure. He works as a defense attorney in town. He has this really interesting life story. He grew up homeless and was in and out of foster care. He talks about how he kind of turned his life around when he was very young. He moved in with some family friends and then went off to the Air Force after graduating, was able to get this military experience, go to college off of that, get his law degree, start his own law firm, work for the prosecutor's office, and sort of build his career from there. But, that's sort of the thing with politics is the most powerful thing for any race is just being the person who's already in office and running for re-election. And so, we're in a county where I think a lot of people think of it as Democratic, but I think it's worth remembering that Kimog is the first Democratic district attorney that this county has had since like the 70s. So it's only been Republicans. This is a very newly Democratic county, and we have Sean, who's been campaigning, and he's been happy to say that he's a progressive prosecutor. That's how he wants to be seen as. That's who he wants to be. We're in this kind of moment in American politics where a lot of concern has been put out there about public safety, especially in big cities. And progressive prosecutors have not done super well, I think, particularly on the West Coast over the last 3 or 4 years. So it's going to be really interesting to see if Shantir is able to buck that. I'm not sure because I think Mayor John Whitmer's election last year kind of showed that there is sort of this feeling among the Houston electorate of kind of wanting that more moderate, that more just sort of public safety, but nuts and bolts kind of focused candidate. And then on the other side, we have Dan Simons. So, like I said, he's a defense attorney who's also a former prosecutor with the Harris County District Attorney's Office.
What kind of campaign is Dan Simons running?
So he's running a very sort of moderate campaign, at least in terms of his messaging, just very I want to work with everybody. I want to do what's best for the county, and I want to get, crime under control. It's very sort of middle of the road, even keeled. He's not trying to, make any big splashy headlines or anything. And so I think strategically that's the safe way to run it. If you're the Republican running in what is a Democratic county to sort of run as this moderate when you're facing this non-incumbent progressive prosecutor, that might break through with voters. So with that in mind, though, it's there has been a bit of polling on this race, and it is looking fairly good for Shantir. The hobby school with the University of Houston found Sean leading Dan 52-38 with 10% of voters undecided. So that does seem to look pretty good for Shantir at this point in time. But I still think that'll kind of break a little bit and be a fairly close race. But either way, it's very important for public safety and, for who's going to be leading the strategy going forward.
Paul, could we see a more aggressive or less aggressive DA's office under each candidate?
Yeah, it's hard to say right now. I mean, I certainly think if Dan Simons goes into office, he's going to continue kind of a more traditional form of public safety and criminal justice, when we're thinking of maybe less bail reform, more just sort of prosecute the bad guys, keep them locked up, keep them off the streets, that we think of as kind of more conservative policing. Shantir has said that he still wants to do all of those things. I think he's talked a lot about he's a progressive prosecutor, but the way he says it is, it's not just I'm a progressive. That means I'm going to open up the jails and let everybody out. We got to be smart in prosecuting the bad guys, but then also making sure we don't create the next generation of criminals. So I think under a Shantir district attorney's office, we will still see some kind of reform-minded policies. And Dan Simons to his credit, I mean, he hasn't sworn away all of the reforms that Kim Og has done either. He said he wants to keep most of them. So I don't think we'll see a massive change either way, but I do think kind of the people who are there now, just given the kind of turmoil in the district attorney's office, I would expect we'll see a lot of turnover, especially among leadership for
Yeah.
either of these two candidates. So that might kind of create some hiccups initially, but I don't think we'll expect to see any huge, massive changes in policy either way.
This is a race that is going to be interesting, and we will be covering it not only throughout next week, but of course during election week as well, because the results are going to impact a lot of people here in the city. Okay, I want to get to my most overlooked story, and buckle up because this one I am very passionate about. And we've been talking about HISD and their $4.4 billion bond that's on the ballot right now. But in Fort Bend, where my daughter goes to school, we voted on a $1.27 billion bond last year for Fort Bend ISD that passed. And since then, it's been an absolute disaster. Now, full disclosure, I voted yes for the bond because it was going to build a new school in our area. But since it passed, we've learned that it was so miscalculated, Paul, that all of the projects are now $74 million over budget, thus creating a huge deficit. So this week, the Fort Bend School Board voted on eliminating this proposed school that I really was excited about because it would be built in my neighborhood, and other projects from the bond to help save the district money. Now, I can't even begin to put into words how frustrating this is because this passed, and as voters, we said, yes, move forward. And now the board is walking this back and saying, hey, look, we can't do this because we miscalculated everything. What a disaster here. And it just shows you the lack of trust that people have when it comes to school boards because of actions like this.
I think that's just a big part of government. I mean, it's frustrating whenever we trust our public officials to do right with our money and they don't, and I think that's a big part of why there is so little trust in a lot of our institutions is kind of these little things. We spend so much time talking about national politics, but when people in their local communities, it's really, that's where they feel it, is if their county is misspending their tax dollars. I mean, people know that. People know where that money should be going to. And, that's not something that helps kind of this overall lack of trust that we're seeing in American politics and sort of these institutions that kind of keep our society together, that educate our kids.
Yeah. And when it comes to something like this, my second question about it was, where's the accountability? Like, how did y'all mess up so badly? Because if this happened in any other business, let's say, there would be accountability, right? Like you miscalculated by this much. So who is going to face some consequences? Well, the consequences are us, the voters, who gave you the trust and said, yes, move forward with this project. Now, the school was going to cost about $47 million, and community members found out about the vote last Sunday. And we all started to rally. We're like, wait, hold on, what is happening here? And during the meeting where they voted on this, the school board did, only 2 community members were heard. And we only had that chance. And the board was just like, sorry, y'all. Guess what? We can revisit this later and maybe we can put this on a future bond. But as of right now, the school board said that this new school that would be built would be under capacity until 2033. And they would revisit zoning for students at our current elementary school because other schools around us aren't at capacity. So, Paul, why even put this on the bond last year? Like, come on, what are we doing here? It is so frustrating. So the reason I'm bringing this story up is obviously like it's grinding my gears, but also a lot of voters in HISD are watching this situation closely, and they're wondering what this means for the historic $4.4 billion bond on the ballot right now to build and renovate dozens of HISD schools. And people are asking questions if Fort Bend can change the projects after the bond has been approved, then could HISD do the same?
Yeah, and honestly, I don't know if they could or not, but what I will say is just from being out at the polling places, from being on the campaign trail, I mean, there is a campaign going on around these bonds. I'm sure everybody has seen the signs of the no trust, no bond, folks that are encouraging voters to vote against the HISD bond because of the lack of trust in the state takeover of the HISD school district and Mike Miles' leadership as superintendent. then you hear on the other side this parent talking about how our kids can't wait and they need this bond now because of, the very well publicized stories about heating and AC units being out in schools, about power issues. These are very real infrastructural issues that we're seeing in HISD that this bond says it will address. But it's totally fair to say, if you look at Fort Bend ISD, you're losing trust in kind of the institutions there. You're looking at HISD with the state takeover, you're losing trust in institutions there. And I think it's going to make for a really close bond election, which is just not something that happens very often. Bonds usually pass with flying colors because people want things to be improved, kind of no matter where you are.
Yeah, can't wait to see how that HISD bond does in the upcoming days as well as early voting continues. And if you want to hear a conversation on the pros and cons of the HISD bond, we have an episode linked in our show notes. The Museum of Fine Arts Houston presents Living with the Gods, Arts, Beliefs, and Peoples. To celebrate its centennial, the museum has organized a once-in-a-lifetime exhibition that features extraordinary objects made by artists to communicate with their gods. Living with the Gods represents a vast array of religions and beliefs, with art created across cultures and across thousands of years. The 200 objects demonstrate the astonishing quality that artists have achieved when driven by passion and faith. Living with the Gods is on view from October 27th through January 20th, 2025. Visit mfah.org/livingwiththegods to learn more. That's mfah.org/livingwiththegods. Houston's original neighborhood, downtown is for everyone, and right now is the perfect time to start a new Saturday tradition with the Market Square Park Farmers Market. Every Saturday until November 16th, from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., you can enjoy this great weather that we're having and walk the farmers market like I do and check out all of the local growers and makers as they provide access to seasonally fresh and affordable fruit and vegetables, plus meat proteins and prepared foods, as well as other household goods. The best part? The Market Square Park Farmers Market is in collaboration with Central City Co-op, which is Houston's oldest organic sustainable food co-op. There are several parking options, and it is accessible by the Metro Rail, so you can easily get to it. You can also enjoy live music performances by local artists and other entertainment so the entire family can have fun. Learn more at downtownhouston.org. Downtown Houston, get energized and revived. Get ready, Houston. The 2024 Houston AfroFest is happening on October 26th from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. at Houston Christian University. Expect a day packed with live music, dance performances, arts and crafts, delicious African cuisines, and an African safari-themed kid zone. This is going to be fun and educational for the entire family, and I can't wait for it. Entry is just $10 if you buy your tickets online now, and it's free for students, veterans, seniors, and kids. But prices will increase at the gate, so get your tickets early on Eventbrite. For more details or vendor registration, visit HoustonAfroFest.org or find them on social media at Houston AfroFest. That's HoustonAfriFest.org. Don't miss out on this vibrant cultural experience and invite others as well. Again, the 2024 Houston AfroFest is on October 26th. We'll see you there. All right, Paul, let's talk about some other races down the ballot because there are a lot and some have caught your eye.
Yeah, absolutely. I wanted to talk about the down ballot races just because I've been spending so much time during early voting out at polling places. And, I always ask people about the top of the ticket, get lots of thoughts on that. And then I say to them, what about the down ballot races? Anything that stood out to you? And I am yet to find anybody who has said there's another race that sticks out to them. And I've talked to a lot of people. There's one. I talked to one guy who said he was Lizzie Fletcher's cousin. So he voted in his Congressional District 7 election. But I was like, that doesn't count. You're related to her. So, And that's frustrating for me because I think these races are very important. And even if the electorate isn't paying a lot of attention to them, the powers that be certainly are. And so the races that I wanted to talk about in particular are the appeals court races that I'm sure everybody in Harris County is going to see on their ballot. These are the criminal appeals courts in Harris County. Say you have a district court decision, it gets appealed up to the appeals court. So these are very powerful races. These are very powerful judgeships that are being eyed by state Republican leadership because Ken Paxton has previously tried to prosecute voter fraud in certain counties without the district attorneys of those local counties supporting him. It was ruled by an appeals court in Texas that he couldn't do that. And so since then, he has been trying to unseat these judges that have ruled against him. And that's no different in Harris County. I'm sure people have seen the Stop Houston Murders PAC. There's a lot of money that's going into making these ads where victims' family members essentially do these kind of sit-down interviews and encourage people to vote against quote-unquote soft-on-crime judges, being the Democratic candidates that are in these seats. And so I think, it's kind of going back to what we talked about earlier, that if you want to know where the interesting races are, you should just look where the resources are going from the campaigns. And a lot of money is being spent on these appeals court races, particularly on the Republican side. And I think that should be an indicator to people that the Republican Party sees an opportunity here to flip these seats.
And by the way, if you want to learn more about Harris County down ballot races, we did a really good episode with Tim Carlin, your colleague at the Houston Landing, about the various judges and positions that are up for election right now. I've linked that episode in our show notes as well. All right, Paul, it's the end of the week. That means it is time for our moment of joy. What made you happy this week? What are you excited about? Give me something happy here. Come on.
Well, I always just have a lot of fun during early voting, kind of feeling the energy of the polling places. I get to go all over the county and talk to people from all these different walks of life, from all these different backgrounds, and just get their thoughts. And, I think especially with such a high turnout election, I'm seeing very long lines. I'm seeing lots of poll workers and lots of people that are just excited about democracy. And I'm a bit of a nerd about politics, but that's my kind of energy. I like being around those people. Mm-hmm. Given the anxiety that we all kind of feel around this election, sometimes it's nice to just talk to folks from different political backgrounds and just have good conversations about their thoughts and just sort of kind of understand why they think about politics the way they do. And I always leave these days at polling places just feeling like, we all kind of want the same thing. We all want to be safe. We all want to be happy. We all want, our families to be happy. And that's kind of it. And so that always gives me hope that, things can be as, anxiety-inducing and divisive around our politics, that we can find a way to come back together. Because I think, just Americans, we all have so much more in common than we don't. I really learned that when I go and talk to voters at polling places.
And that's kind of where my moment of joy is as well. I'm just so excited and happy to see people are digging into the ballots. They're looking at races. They are investigating, like, what did this person do before? And they're not just going, hey, I'm just going to vote. Yay, we're just going to go vote and just go, exactly straight ticket like we usually do. People that I know are asking for resources. They are digging into a lot more. And that makes me happy because you are actually caring about what is on the ballot and how it's going to impact you, not only nationally, state level, but of course, locally right here, whether it be in your school district or your city or your county. So I love the energy that I've seen so far, and it's going to be an interesting few days and upcoming week here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, love or hate the guy, Donald Trump has certainly contributed to a huge increase in turnout in elections over the last 8 years. Ever since he first ran, people are paying a lot more attention to politics than they used to. Whether or not that's a good or a bad thing, people are voting, and they are doing their research. And, I guess we should appreciate that.
Paul, thank you so much for joining us. I know it's a busy time right now for you, so I truly appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Raheel.
That was Paul Cobler with the Houston Landing. I've linked all the stories we discussed in our show notes. Hey, a big thank you to everyone who shared one of our episodes this week. And if you haven't yet, please share this episode with 3 friends to help us grow the show. Thanks. That will do it for this week here on CityCast Houston. Our producer is Carleon Jones. Our newsletter editors were Adrian Gonzalez, Francisco Kilgore, and of course, Brooke Lewis. Our executive producer is Laura Isensee, and I'm your host, Raheel Ramzanali. Our music is by the band All the Kimonos. We'll be back on Monday with a conversation about women of color surviving breast cancer against the odds. Thank you for listening, and I hope you learned something new.
Hey, Raheel, I'm great. Happy Friday. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing great. I'm going to stop there because I've got to do a backup recording since I had to stop the other one. So let me do that real quick. All right, let's try this one more time. I'm glad I caught that because that would have been bad.